Welcome to Aggressively Healthy. And we've now, I think we're on episode maybe 3, 4, 5, I don't know for sure, but thank you to all of our listeners, followers, inquiries. We've had some good client interaction or listener or viewer interaction. And really, like we always say, our whole thing is education and information. So today's topics, we had some people send in some questions for discussion, which we'll get to down the road, but I wanted to kind of start off with a little bit of current events expose. So I Googled and looked up on CNN's health website, and I just saw a few things that were highlighted. National news, there's always the clearly garbage. But one thing that popped up was an HIV prevention medication. So there's an injection for HIV that you can use to help try to cure it once you have it. But they've now found, and the FDA showed, that 2 shots a year of this stuff, lenacapavir, will really aid and has proven beneficial in avoiding the onset of HIV. Any thoughts on something like this popping up randomly now, years into the HIV epidemic, post-COVID? Do we have any insight onto potentially that this technology might have been available before and maybe just popped out, or what are your thoughts on this?
The first thing I think about is, because this is the first I'm hearing about this, why isn't this bigger news?
Right.
Like, remember how scary the whole AIDS and HIV epidemic was in the early 90s? And mind you, we were like 12.
Yeah.
But, Magic Johnson getting AIDS and the movie Philadelphia, there was a lot of buzz.
Well, how about this? I have a client who's in his 70s, adult gay male who grew up and lived in Manhattan, New York City, down on the Lower East Side when this all was happening, the HIV epidemic was starting, and he referred to it as the equivalent to the Holocaust. He said all of his friends were dying. Like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, but they were gay men. So, continuing with what you're saying, like, why isn't it getting more attention?
I don't know. I mean, you would think if we just found the cure for like pancreatic cancer, it would be everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not saying it was just, it was, I guess, associated a lot with the gay community.
Yeah.
But
everybody,
we're all, exposed or in some way affected by it,
right?
Culturally, at least. So it's interesting that something like this that seems pretty freaking groundbreaking.
Yeah.
That they thought it was like literally a plague of sorts.
Right.
That 30 some odd years later, after it became a big national global thing.
Yeah.
That we're not talking about. Like, I had no idea.
Now, the other interesting to me in terms of the HIV and AIDS topic is this. Magic Johnson got diagnosed with AIDS, and he was like the big ambassador for the AIDS community because he was one of the first real famous, big name celebrity / athletes that had dealt with it. At the time that he was diagnosed, there were still hundreds of thousands of people dying from AIDS every year without treatment, but somehow he survived. So it then brings into play, was the technology there just truly not affordable? Because if you do expose this treatment for AIDS, somewhat close to the treatment for COVID that somehow popped out of the blue, but was like a very well-known technology that because remember, we got sold on the COVID vaccine with, oh no, we've had this technology for a while. Now's just the time to use it.
Yeah, right.
And now all of a sudden the HIV things happen. So I don't know, the HIV community, if I were them, I'd be pretty irritated, personally. Because if I've been living with HIV, watching friends dying, watching friends get it, really from, at this point, probably innocuous activity that like everybody's doing anyways.
Yeah, right.
And now all of a sudden this is out. I don't know. It would probably bother me. Second topic, and we talk about a lot. So exercise, nutrition, healthcare, we want you to be metabolically healthy. But structural soundness is a big deal too. Bone health and your muscle health. Bone health has now come back into the forefront in a recent article, 2003 to 2023. Death rates, this is not broken bones, this is death, dying in the ground, game over. Death rates from falls, this is falling from a standing height, this is not off a ladder, this is not off a roof, this is standing on your own 2 feet and falling on the ground. The death rate went up 70%, 70. In the ages of 75 to 84, between 2003 and 2023, if you fell, there was a 75% increase in death rate. We claim as a healthcare community that we're doing a good fucking job. We have 75% more people dying from falling on their feet. Like, think about how stupid that is. And I just talked about an HIV vaccine. We're working on fucking sending people to the moon. Mars. We're working on AI, which we'll talk about later. And we have an increase in people dying from falling. There has to be a root cause to this issue.
Are they associating or is the death rate based on the death from the fall or the complications of the fall? So, like, let's say
the fall triggered the events. So so there could be a pneumonia to follow up, a heart attack. There could be disability from being at home, malnutrition, all of it.
And do they have the numbers on, like, what you said, 70% increase over that?
Yeah, I didn't write down the actual raw numbers, but percentage wise.
But that just goes to show, like, the fragility that once you get to your 70s, there's a couple of things that you got to watch out for, and falling is one of them now.
Yeah, and the odd thing is too, like, we have technology in this gym that's called the DEXA scheme.
Okay.
We can assess your bone density in, I will use the layman term because it's still fun to use, like in a gym. When really we're building the version of healthcare that needs to exist, right? Like 75% increase in death from falls, like doesn't make sense as a healthcare community to allow that to happen in front of your face.
There has to, especially at that age group.
Right.
It's not that old.
It's not that old. And the second thing is, if we really look at the reasons this is happening, it's all because you fall and you break something, right? If you just fall, nothing breaks, and you stand up, you're probably not going to die from that fall. But if you fall and a bone breaks, now your risk of death is real. So what, in turn, can we do as a community, instead of wasting money on all these terminal events like curing crazy random diseases out there, how about the 75% increase in falls? What can we do to stop it?
Well, real quick, did that article talk about, like, what bones? I mean, obviously, no, the bigger, like a femur.
Yeah, major bones.
But, like,
discrepancies?
Yeah, like arm too.
No, and the fall could break ribs, shoulders,
humerus. I just didn't know if they kind of.
I didn't get deeper into it. I just wanted that, like, profound. Now, from a gym side of things, what do you think?
Well, we know all tissue responds in a similar fashion. Bone, ligament, tendon, muscle, in response to stress, which is essentially the mechanical tension that we're inputting with resistance training, weight bearing exercise. It just happens on different timelines, and those tissues respond, for the most part, the same. But that's why it's also very important to do this as a long-term approach, rather than, you don't just cure osteopenia with resistance training and say, all right, you're done now.
Right.
So it does have to have some kind of way of looking at it from, all right, well, let's back into your 8th decade of life, and what does that look like from a resistance training program or any type of exercise program, and say, well, what you're doing at 30 is going to be a little bit different than what you do at 40.
Right.
50, 60, 70, and each decade might warrant a different discussion or a different angle to approach. But for the most part, weight training has been shown time and time again to be one of the best, most efficacious ways of dealing with bone density issues.
Yeah.
Because your tissues don't care. It just is going to respond to the stress. Now, that also means that you have to have the proper nutrition support so that you do have the raw materials to build and supply those tissues with the resources that it needs to grow and develop.
Yep. And the craziest part is, in terms of in a bone, right? Everybody associates bones with just calcium, but there's so many other minerals involved in your bone formation. Then it gets into the foundational of vitamins and nutrition with the resistance training. All of these things that we kind of forget, the majority of can be avoided with simple care, right? So that 75% could easily be 10, or could easily actually be 0, because if we were paying attention to healthcare, not terminal care, we would avoid those things. Now, I have a question for you. When was the last time that the Orthopedic Association of the United States, or whatever governing body the orthopedic surgeons of the world have done a large rally march somewhere in the United States to really fight against osteoporosis and osteopenia, create a ton of knowledge for the middle-aged and elderly population of the United States to avoid bone breaking? When was the last time?
The last time it was never.
Never. That's the same. They held that rally next to the bariatric surgeon rally where they were helping people with their diet, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at what I'm trying to say is, it's a reason, right? Like, we exist in this space because the healthcare being given in the other spaces so poorly delivered. So the only way that that business of surgery survives and continues to flourish, which is scary because the United States is going to be deficient in specialty services in the medical industry, such as neurosurgery, ortho, urology, all these things are deficient doctors, but we shouldn't need more. We should need less, right? Because prevention of illness is a relatively straightforward thing. Simply coming down to, instead of majoring in the minors, major in the majors. Which, what would be your biggest, major topics to pull in terms of if you were somebody who wanted to just change your life and get healthier? What would you say the best approach to starting that battle?
It's oddly basic and boring. Like, most of the things that we talk about are the unsexy things that you have to do kind of forever. And I think this is where also, if you're looking at social media, people are talking about these extravagant biohacking type of things, where it be, the glucose monitors or the cold plunges or a specific diet that eliminates all these things and you get all these benefits from.
Right.
But it's really it's a matter of long-term adherence.
Yeah.
So then you can reverse engineer that into okay, what's going to allow this person to adhere for the longest period of time, whether it be the exercise selection or the activity selection, the nutrition protocol, the stress management, the relationship with good people.
Yeah.
It's just stuff like that. But it's really hard to sell those things.
Yeah.
And that's why we're pretty clear on what we're trying to deliver is the accountability measures that will allow you to explore and perform and execute those things that will garner the longest term benefit and the greatest benefit over that long time horizon. So if I had to just put it, if you could train 2 days a week, resistance training 2 days a week forever, if you could do some moderate cardiovascular activity 2 days a week forever, if you can eat a balanced diet that keeps you at a healthy body weight and body composition forever, those are the things that no one wants to talk about, but those are the things that you ultimately have to deal with.
Yeah, because it's an interesting concept in terms of the marketing that gyms do. We went to a big gym meeting and their whole thing was the challenge, right? And the way to build revenue in the gym is to do challenges. And it's nice because it immediately allows people to enter into something where they see a result, they're around people doing the same thing. And I love it. I'm not poo-pooing that at all. I think it should be promoted. Keep it going. I would promote it even more, but it's an impossible sell because you can't go up to somebody who's 45 years old and be like, hey, Mike, we're going to enter a challenge. And you're like, great, how long does it last? Until you die.
Yeah.
Right? That's a really hard sell. So instead, we have to sell these shorter periods of time where we see the end result. But truly, in your brain, if you were to put your mindset in someone else, what would that be in terms of your mindset on what you believe healthcare is? Because I know we talk about the definition of things in other people's terms, but I think people need to get to know maybe us a little more, right? What's your version of healthy that you could impose, if you could, on someone else that would help them improve their overall?
So I'll go back to the statement of the challenges are great to get people going and maybe not a great way to keep people going forever. And I think most people at this point, or if you look at what the statistics look like in terms of obesity rates, healthcare, health issues, so on and so forth, it's really, if you're not willing to make a big change, at least in the short run, it's really hard to then commit to little changes.
Right.
And I appreciate that. I acknowledge that. It's hey, if I went to someone who is in really a bad position, they're 50 pounds overweight, they have a terrible relationship with food, and I say, hey, you know what? Let's just not drink soda.
Yeah.
Which will inevitably help them. Just removing regular soda from their diet.
Yeah.
But it might not be a big enough mindset shift
Yeah.
to create the buy-in or to create a commitment to making drastic changes.
Yeah.
So I like using short-term goals in the context of long-term goals. So if we want to lose 100 pounds in 10 years, well, can we get 30 pounds in 3 months?
Yeah.
And then that person then has to commit to the identity shift and then get rid of a bunch of things.
Yeah.
And then hopefully we can get to a maintenance program at some point where it's like, that's just who they are and what they do. It's not another challenge to add like a different food group or a different type of exercise routine. It's that they are now challenging themselves. Like they are committed to the act.
Yeah. Well, it makes me giggle a little bit because if I said to you, Mike, what's your maintenance routine? That is a very different version than like the maintenance routine of somebody who's just trying to like make sure they can walk around the grocery shop. But the reason I want to bring it up is like it's still a maintenance routine. And like you said, the method you use right now is going to change 100%. Right? And that's the beauty of, I think, physical health because it has to adjust. But that's where facilities and people like you come into play. Because if you met with me once a year and were like, hey, I'm going to help you get healthy, that's really not effective. Health is an everyday thing.
Yeah.
And we have been so fucking brainwashed by the population of administrators that just want to suck money off workers to be convinced that your health is something you just need to pay for to a company that has a giant building up in Bloomfield called Hartford Healthcare, where the fuck it was I drove by. The biggest fucking building I've ever seen. Insurance company. But aside from that, they tricked you into thinking that when you pay for health insurance, you're healthy. So it's a back burner, right? Nope, I pay for it. I go see my doctor. I get my labs. I'm good to go. Off the table. The rest of my life is what matters. Actually, the rest of your life fucking doesn't matter. And I can prove that, right? And how do we prove that? Anybody who walks in here perfectly healthy, perfectly sound, mind and body, working, making money, financially stable, whatever it is, perfect life. Give them a fucking pneumonia and put them in the hospital for a month. Watch how quickly nothing else matters, right? So if you don't table the healthcare item and you back burner it because you've been taught by us, the community of the world now telling you just buy healthcare, that's how you get safe. You're never really going to front burner it and pay attention, but you have to because it is the primary thing that drives us to achieve everything we do on every day, right? So I think that version of health you stated in terms of its altering kind of what it's going to look like and how the approach is really relevant because we change metabolically too.
Yeah. So to me, it's an inside-out phenomenon. It's like who you are is based on what you do.
Right.
So if you're someone like in that stereotypical context of like you're overweight, you have a bad relationship with food and whatever else, and then you start going to the gym early in the morning, which means you can't stay up till midnight, which means you go to bed earlier, which means you don't watch as much TV, play as many video games, scroll on Instagram as much to get to the gym 3 days a week. And then you start eating better. You don't hang out at bars. You stop hanging out with people. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not just the fact that your metabolism changes. You have changed.
Right.
Your mindset has shifted. Your personality is like, you're able to allow yourself to evolve away from what you were.
Yep.
And that's the cool thing I think about the fitness industry and now what we're doing, the medical side of things, because as your body changes, as your mind changes, your program certainly changes, your diet certainly changes.
Yeah.
But all the other activities that now you're permitted to do and have earned the right to do evolves along with you. Yeah. So there is this like long-term ascension play out of it, which is to me, when getting back to the idea of a challenge, is like, who do I get to be next by the things that I do and commit to? Yeah. And another thing that you talked about is you discussed like where people don't like that they pay one thing and they wait. we're talking about a responsibility.
Right.
It's a day-to-day responsibility, which most people have just not thought about. Like, your health is a responsibility.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it, like it or not, that's what it is.
Yep. And that's a very hot topic.
Which is a personal responsibility. Oh, yeah.
Right? Because if you look at the version of healthcare we want to deliver to the people, we always try to remove all accountability from the patient. Right? Like, if you're 300 pounds and you have a heart attack and you're severe diabetic and doctors have been telling you your whole life not to do that, you go to the hospital with a heart attack, about to go to the operating room. Nobody comes up to you and is like, hey man, can you swipe your credit card for this? Mm-hmm. And when they're like, what do you mean? You're like, well, I mean, you kind of did this, right? Now, do not take this out of context. There are instances I would be more than willing to give up my entire life savings to save someone else's life if they can't help. I am not saying shit we can't control, right? 5-year-old with glioblastoma, yes, I'm into helping that person. Adult ALS can't help, I'm into helping that person, no problem. But the avoidable diseases take some goddamn accountability. So that same patient I mentioned rolls into the hospital, they pay their $3,000 a month premium, whatever, they get their surgery, they walk out, they're still 300 pounds diabetic with a heart attack, now they're fixed, continuing down that same road because we quote unquote saved their life. But really we didn't save anything. We just prolonged a shitty quality, right? Because living like that, if you have a heart attack, you clearly weren't living a really good, lead-up, healthy life until that. And I can say that, right? The majority of heart attacks are driven, the majority of vascular events, the majority of healthcare events in this country that lead to death are usually onset of a disease that's somewhat avoidable. Vascular disease is the number one killer, right? And we do nothing to try to prevent it. Now, we said the definition of healthcare and how you can promote that and how you can get people to buy it. If you were to pick like the perfect client to walk into your office and say, hi, Mike, I am Johnny or Jenny, and I want to become your client, what would that look like to you in terms of their commitment to your philosophy?
So obviously I have a pretty strong background in team sports, you know, individually, I played a bunch, and then professionally, that's where I started. Was trying to foster a lot of this comes down to the selection process. So we have a pretty, I wouldn't say stringent, but pretty deliberate way of figuring out if we're right to work with people. Yeah. And honestly, it's no different than like your kid's t-ball team or your collegiate lacrosse team. You try to go on character. Yeah. And when I say that, I mean someone who's willing to be coached and taught, and who's willing to listen and create. Because here's the two things that I think are non-negotiables in terms of success, is that you work your ass off and you take feedback really well. Yeah. And that feedback is concise, it is timely, it is precise to your specific needs. Yeah. But if you're not willing to be coached, like think about like you selected the first overall pick in the NFL draft, and that guy doesn't want to do the work. Yeah. Because I don't care how talented or what his projected stats are going to be. If he's not willing to be a team player, to be coach and sacrifice a little bit, right? Like, he's not an asset to the team. Yeah. And I like for the person on the other side of the table to evaluate us in the same way. It's like, it's got to be a two-way street. Like, this is a symbiotic relationship. Yeah. Yeah. Like, we have to be able to work together, communicate effectively, know how each other want to be talked to and coached up, so that we can maximize our time together. Yeah. So I think it starts with that person's character trait of coachability. Yeah. That's the first thing I think about. Love it. The second thing I think about is they gotta want it. Like I know, like the hunger. Like again, going back to the athlete scenario, it's like I want the hungriest kid on the team. Yeah. I will never cut that kid. Yeah. Because he's gonna hustle his ass off, even if he's not the most talented. He's gonna stick around and he's gonna produce at some point for you. Yep. And you're probably going to get disproportionate returns on that person. Yeah. So I think about that in terms of the coaching or the psychological profile rather than like physiology. That's the easy stuff. Right. Do this, eat that, train this way, so on and so on. It's the psychological profile that's the biggest indicator if I want to work with that person and or if I think we can be successful together.
Yeah, I think in the medical space, it's very similar. You know, you get a lot of people that just want the quick fix. And I try to explain to people, like, all of what you do in terms of biochemical medicine is great. And it will help you live longer. It will help you improve your quality. But if you lay in a bed completely stagnant and inject yourself with hormones and take your medicines and eat perfect but don't move, like perfectly flat, so your biochemistry is perfect, nutritional is perfect, but you're not moving, you'll die, right? So the commitment from them has to be movement, has to be intent to improve that movement, intent to work with the coaching. And I think that's part of the deal. I had a client yesterday, a couple client stories. This one's pretty interesting. So this woman has been working with me now for 8 months. So we get on a call. She's really bad. And I'm like, this is good. So she's like, none of this is working. I'm fed up. Like, I signed up to get blah, 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 results, whatever. I said, no problem. So we started talking. So how often do you take your vitamins? What they make, I don't like it. Okay, all right. Now, how compliant have you been with medical care? Well, my friend told me, now she never told me, 8 months. My friend told me that this stuff will cause cancer. So I just wanted to see how my body. And I said, so we go through this whole thing. So she did nothing. Nothing changed. So at the end of it, she's like, what am I paying for? I said, nothing. I said, I'd rather you have not wasted 8 months of my time, right? Buy in. So I also think part of what I'm trying to say is, like, if you don't like what we're delivering to the RTS health and RTS training and RTS philosophy of healthcare, then don't come here, right? Because I don't really want to, as probably you, work with people that aren't bought in.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to sell you isn't the fat. Like, you don't come here and we give you a quick vitamin. No. The beauty and the amazing thing is we're actually selling like the most simple form of it. It's like, you want concrete? Great.
Yeah.
We'll give you the dirt. We'll give you the water. We'll even fucking mix it for you. All you gotta do is watch it dry. That's how easy this program is. And when I say that, that sounds like sales pitch, because you watch like Ron Popeil back in the day, flour, water, pasta, right? And we're like, oh, nutrition, exercise, and all of a sudden you're healthy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly how it works.
And I think a lot of people, and we're not ones to say this, but it's always to trust the process. People, I think people should be wary of.
Yeah.
Like, trust me, guaranteed this and that. It's like, I don't want you to trust anything. Yeah. I just want you to engage with the process, because that's where all the gold is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, when we start looking at your blood panels, and then we start giving you the exercise, the training, the medical stuff, and then 3 months later we can look at the bloods again. Yeah. It's like, holy shit, if you did the work, if you executed the plan, I don't know if it 100% worked, but we now have new information, and the backbone of long-term success is informed decision making. Yeah. So because the gold is in the information, the more you do, the more information we have to then redirect, refine, course correct, whatever it may be. Yeah. But if we don't, for that, like that person that was here for 8 months and they have no new information, and now they're wondering why nothing changed, because nothing changed. Yeah. It's like, well, yeah, you didn't engage with it. Right. And I never told you to trust me. Right. I told you to do the shit. Correct. Challenge me through your activity. Challenge me through.
I always tell them to do that. Now, second story, which is pretty interesting. Later 70s adult male, Parkinsonian style illness.
For how long?
Years, about eight or so years. Okay. Broken back in the past. A little bit of a stubborn old guy. Didn't really want to help. Let it heal. Can't really walk well without a cane. So walks in severe pain. Not very interactive with his family. Can't play golf. Like, doesn't do anything. So I start treating with a nice little concoction of what I think he needs, because his blood labs showed me. I didn't guess. I did what he told me. And in doing so, I gave him back a lot of life. He felt great. And he started walking around without a cane, started interacting with his family more. His son actually said, I don't even recognize the guy. This is a whole new person. They go to their primary care visit. They walk in. He walks in looking like the guy I just described, and this doctor had previously seen the guy. He was treated for the past 8 years with a cane, not moving. So the guy said, what are you doing? And he told him, and the guy said, oh no, you need to stop that. That stuff's dangerous. I'll leave you guys to think about what you want, if whoever the listeners might be at this point. But if you think about that statement and how corrupt of a mind you have to have, that your ego is able to insert itself in the face of progress of a medical patient who previously was essentially gonna head down the road of wheelchair, who's going. And now we bought him maybe, I don't know, even if it's another 10 months of feeling like he does today, that's quality.
Yeah.
And if you ask him how he feels, I feel great, but the doctor told me I don't know who to believe. Now, just think about how insane that is, that the medical community has built so much trust in them being the Bible that these people are willing to live a worse quality, worse lifestyle than with good medical attention just because the insurance-based system told them so.
Well, it reminds me of like the illusion of choice.
Yeah.
You know, that individual, let's say there was some detrimental effects to this course of action.
Right.
But you clearly explain, like, hey, you're going to feel better, you're going to move around, you're going to feel 20 years younger, you're not going to have all these symptoms. However, it does pose a risk at some point that, you might just fall off the cliff rather than this slow decline, which is almost guaranteed with the path that you're going.
Yeah.
It's up to him. We're a country of freedom, right?
Yeah.
It's his ability to make that informed decision on what he wants out of his life.
Yeah.
But if he never visited you, if he never talked about his options,
yeah.
he would only have that other thing because that's what the medical community was providing him as the illusion of choice. Like, this is it. Sorry. Like, you can either degrade slowly or just fall off a cliff.
And now imagine if a guy like that,
with no upside.
Imagine if a guy like that now, because he goes to like a little bit of I think movement type gym where they're doing more PT style. But imagine if he came to a gym where he's actually straining his muscles, working, and now he's biologically better managed. And now his muscles are more progressive. Now his nerves are like, I got something to tickle around with, right? Who knows what progress we can make with that like this? But all it took was one uninformed, uneducated doctor to say, I don't think that's good. And now his entire trajectory is changing.
Yeah.
So I think there is a topic we need to get to at some point on the AI industry, and I think we'll maybe leave that for the next one because I think we're gonna have to wrap it up soon for the rest of the day to progress. So the AI topic, though, I definitely want to talk about next week. I think it's a big deal in terms of medicine. I think it's a big deal in terms of training. I was messing around with ChatGPT. They'll spit out workout programs and whatever. And I'm sure you feel the same way about those workout programs that I do about the structured medical plan ChatGPT spits out. But we'll get to that down. Marcus, you live with us? What?
Oh yeah, Marcus is here.
Yeah, Marcus is here. Marcus, what's your favorite food?
Pizza. Easy.
Really?
Yeah. New Haven pizza.
What kind of pizza?
Pepper eggs.
Really?
What kind? Like, what do you?
Pepperoni.
Pepperoni.
I like.
What are you,
that.
7?
It's basic, but
Grape soda.
come on.
Grape soda. Never have I ever accidentally forwarded an email to a coworker that talked shit about them.
No, not a coworker, but I did have. I replied to I was BCC'd on the email, and it was, long story short, I responded as if I was CC'd, and that was a cluster.
Blew it up.
Yeah, it was not good.
Worst is text. You hit send and you're like,
Oh,
Yeah, everyone's done that.
Yeah. Never have I ever. All right, Marcus. Dated a stripper? Yes, you have. If you guys know what Marcus looks like, you know.
Yeah. Super handsome.
Really handsome, bearded, muscular guy. Never have I ever used LinkedIn to try and hook up with someone. Marcus?
No, I never do.
LinkedIn. All right. Never have I ever spent the night on a park bench. Done it. College.
Not a park.
I spent the night in a McDonald's.
They let you stay there?
Yeah, in New York.
In the booth?
Yeah, because my friend couldn't get in my dorm, so I just stayed with him, and he had to go home. But he didn't know how to take the train home, so I was like, I'll stay with you until the morning.
No way.
McDonald's, yeah.
You are. Yeah, your mom's right, man. Shout out to Marcus' mom. She's really nice, and she said, never have I ever puked on the dance floor. Fuck, 3,000 times. I think college part of my dance routine was a little bit of a vomit show.
I don't know, on the dance floor.
at a bar, at a dance floor, at an alley.
Oh, there was definitely public.
In a limo, in a taxi, in an airport, on a plane. Just
been around it.
Never have I ever frantically tried to stop a video before the autoplay kicked in. Never have I ever been kicked in the nuts.
My son has
Yeah.
kicked me in the nuts more times.
Actually, yesterday, little kid's lax.
Oh.
7-year-old, some kid fired a ball at another kid's hand straight in the air. Bang! And his mom was like, "Oh, I think you got hit." I was like, "Oh, it's gonna hurt." It's gonna hurt. Never have I ever shown up to Thanksgiving high. No.
Hammered.
Never
high. Never got
caught. Good possibility. Never have I ever been called the wrong name during sex. I have.
No.
No.
Yeah, it was fun. Real ugly situation. College. Yeah, it was fun. It was interesting. It was very.
Have you ever called anyone the wrong name?
No, I'm a silent killer. Right?
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I'm an assassin.
I might as well. Never have I ever ended a date in half an hour or less. That's a tough one. I've never actually. Have you guys ever been on a blind date?
Yeah, Elizabeth.
Oh
no,
my wife.
I've never been on. No, I didn't mean that the date was blind.
Oh,
because I dated blind. I don't know if I ever have.
What?
Been on a blind date. I'd never done that. Have you ever?
maybe with like a group of friends, we all go out.
Remember those things, speed dating?
Oh yeah.
That you like sit at the table. Yeah, you just like go around and talk to
Yeah.
Last one. Never have I ever put a match out on my tongue. Definitely.
Come on.
You've never smoked a cigarette, but I guarantee you've eaten one.
Then put it out.
Definitely.
On my own body.
Yeah, he's probably never smoked one. I'll attest to that, but he's definitely pulling out. God bless everybody. Listen, if there's more topics, let us know. If there's things you want to up, let us know. We are here to inform. We want to help. Women, men, kids, adults. Our only objective is healthcare. And I really mean that. It's one of the first times I have 100% in my life been fully like every molecule aligned with the vision of my brain. Right? And I think healthcare is the same thing on you. And all we want to do is pump out healthy people.
That's it.
On to the next day. Enjoy the weekend.